Commander Zevik floated in the command chair of his dying ship, the Singing Horizon. The lights had dimmed to almost nothing, powered only by the emergency batteries that would fail soon. His crew of 17 sat quietly around him, each lost in their own thoughts as they waited for the end. The ship had broken down 3 days ago. One moment they were traveling through empty space between star systems, and the next moment the engines failed completely. The engineering team tried everything they could think of, but nothing worked. They were stuck in the middle of nowhere with no way to move and no way to fix what was broken. Zevik activated the distress beacon immediately. It sent out a signal in all directions calling for help. The beacon used the last of their power reserves, but it was their only chance. Someone had to hear it. Someone had to come. But Zevik knew the truth. He had been traveling through space for more than 40 years. He knew how things worked out here. Ships did not stop to help other ships unless there was profit in it. Rescue missions cost fuel, time, and money. Most captains would see the distress signal, calculate the cost, and keep moving. Still, he hoped. Hope was all they had left. The first ship appeared on their sensors 20 hours after the beacon started broadcasting. It was a Keltorian freighter, big and powerful with plenty of room for passengers. Zevik watched the sensor display as the freighter came close enough to detect them clearly. The ship slowed down just a little, probably scanning them to see what happened. Then it turned away and continued on its route. Zevik felt his hope crack but not break. There would be other ships. 6 hours later, a Vorthine military patrol passed through the area. Military ships had the best equipment and the most resources. Surely they would help. But the patrol did not even slow down. Their sensors must have picked up the distress beacon, but they simply ignored it and flew past. The crack in Zevik's hope grew wider. Then came the third ship, and this one hurt the most. It was another Talroxy merchant vessel, captained by someone named Horvix. Zevik had trained with Horvix decades ago at the Merchant Academy. They had been friends once, or as close to friends as two competitive merchants could be. Zevik sent a direct transmission to Horvix's ship, begging for help. He explained that they only needed to be towed to the nearest station. His company would pay for everything. "Please," he said. "Please help us." The response came back cold and brief. "I am sorry, Zevik. I cannot afford the fuel cost or the time delay. You understand how it is. May the void be gentle with you." Then Horvix's ship accelerated and disappeared into the distance. Zevik's hope shattered completely. He looked around at his crew. Some were sleeping to conserve oxygen. Others sat awake, writing final messages to their families on their personal devices. His navigator, Tellus, had tears running down her face as she recorded a message for her children. The oxygen gauge showed they had maybe 40 hours left. After that, they would start suffocating. It would not be a quick death. First they would get drowsy and confused. Then they would struggle to breathe. Finally, they would lose consciousness and slip away. Zevik had made peace with this. He had lived a good life. He had seen many worlds and made good profits for his company. He had a family back home who would remember him. This was simply how things ended sometimes in space. He had ignored distress calls himself twice in his career when the cost was too high. He understood why the other ships left them to die. It was just business. The oxygen kept running out. The crew grew quieter. Some had already passed out from the thin air. Zevik felt his own mind getting foggy. His lungs burned with each breath. He closed his eyes and tried to think of pleasant memories. Then Tellus gasped. "Commander, a ship is coming." Zevik forced his eyes open. His vision was blurry, but he could see the sensor display. A new ship had appeared, and it was moving fast, too fast. It was burning fuel at a rate that made no sense at all. "What kind of ship is it?" Zevik asked. His voice came out as a whisper. Tellus worked the controls with shaking hands. "I do not know. The computer does not recognize the design. It is not in our database." The ship came closer, and Zevik could see it more clearly on the display. It was medium-sized, somewhere between a transport and a military vessel. The shape was strange, all sharp angles and aggressive lines. It looked like it was built for fighting, but it was clearly not a warship. "They are slowing down," Tellus said. Her voice was full of disbelief. "Commander, they are actually slowing down for us." Zevik stared at the display. The unknown ship was definitely decelerating. It was burning huge amounts of fuel to stop quickly and match position with the Singing Horizon. No merchant would ever waste fuel like that. No military ship would bother unless ordered to do so. The communications panel crackled to life. A voice spoke in Galactic Common, but with an accent Zavik had never heard before. The words were pronounced strangely, but he could understand them. Distressed vessel Singing Horizon, this is the transport ship Morning Star. We received your distress beacon. Hold on tight. We are coming to get you. Who are you? Zavik managed to ask. We are humans from Earth, the voice replied. Help is on the way, humans. The word stirred something in Zavik's foggy memory. He had heard of them. They were a new species that had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. Most of the galaxy considered them primitive and inexperienced. They came from some backwater planet far from the major trade routes. Why are you stopping? Zavik asked. What do you want in payment? There was a pause. Then the voice came back, sounding confused. Payment? We are not stopping for payment. We are stopping because you need help. Just hang on. We will be there in 16 hours. 16 hours. That would put them right at the edge of when their oxygen would run out. It would be very close. Tellus looked at Zavik with wonder in her eyes. They are really coming for us. I cannot believe it. Zavik could not believe it either. In all his years traveling through space, he had never heard of anyone making a rescue like this. Ships did not just help each other for no reason. There was always an angle, always a cost, always a reason, but the human ship kept coming. Zavik watched it on the sensors as it burned through fuel at an incredible rate. They were sacrificing their own resources to reach a ship full of aliens they had never met. Tell them thank you, Zavik said to Tellus. Tell them we will wait. Around him, his crew had heard the news. Those who were still conscious were crying with relief. Those who had passed out were being gently woken up by their friends to hear the impossible news. Help was coming. They were not going to die alone in the dark. Zavik leaned back in his chair and took a shallow breath of the thin air. He did not understand why the humans were doing this. It made no logical sense, but he would have plenty of time to ask questions later. For now, all that mattered was that someone had heard their call. Someone was coming. And maybe, just maybe, the galaxy was not as cold and empty as he had always believed. Part 2 Captain Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the Morning Star and watched her crew work with fierce determination. They had been pushing the ship hard for the past 14 hours, racing toward the disabled alien vessel that was quickly running out of air. Every minute counted now. The bridge was busy with activity. Lieutenant Jake Morris sat at the sensor station, constantly updating the distance to the target. Chief Engineer Danny Walsh called up from the engine room every few minutes with status reports. First Officer Peter Hayes stood beside Lisa, quietly managing the crew and making sure everything ran smoothly. Lisa had not slept since they picked up the distress call. None of them had. When the beacon first appeared on their sensors, she made the decision to respond in less than 10 seconds. Some of her crew tried to warn her about the fuel cost and the time delay, but she shut down those concerns immediately. People were dying out there, and the Morning Star had the power to save them. That was the end of the discussion. Captain, we are burning through fuel faster than projected, Danny reported from engineering. At this rate, we might not have enough to reach the next station after we finish the rescue. Then we will figure something out, Lisa replied. We are not leaving them to die. Peter moved closer and lowered his voice. Captain, I have been reading about the species in this sector. They do not help each other like we do. When a ship breaks down out here, other ships just leave them. It is considered normal. Lisa turned to look at him. That is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. I am just saying they might not understand why we are doing this. They might think we have some hidden agenda. I do not care what they think, Lisa said firmly. We know people are dying and we can help them. That is all that matters, Peter nodded. He already knew Lisa would say that. In the 6 months since humanity started exploring this part of space, they had earned a reputation for being unpredictable. Other species spent time calculating risks and profits before making decisions. Humans just did what felt right and dealt with the consequences later. The Morning Star was built for long-range exploration and trade. It carried a crew of 43 humans, all volunteers who wanted to see what was beyond Earth's solar system. They had modern engines, good sensors, and enough cargo space to make trade profitable. But most importantly, they had a crew who believed in helping others. Dr. Karen Foster came onto the bridge carrying a datapad. She was the ship's medical officer, and she looked worried. Captain, I have been studying the biology of these Talroxy aliens. They breathe oxygen and nitrogen like we do, but their bodies do not handle carbon dioxide as well as ours. If they have been trapped for almost 40 hours, they are going to be in very bad shape when we reach them. What do you need? Lisa asked. I need the medical bay ready for at least 17 patients. I need emergency oxygen supplies prepared, and I need to know how we are going to get them off their ship and onto ours. Jake spoke up from the sensor station. Their ship uses a different docking system than ours. Our airlocks will not connect properly. Then we go old school, Danny said over the communication system. We suit up and use the emergency airlock. I can rig something to create a seal between the ships. It will not be pretty, but it will work, Lisa smiled. This was what she loved about her crew. They did not waste time explaining why something could not be done. They just found a way to make it work. Do it, she ordered. Everyone prepare for emergency rescue operations. I want teams ready to board their ship the second we arrive. The next 2 hours felt like the longest of Lisa's life. She watched the distance to the alien ship slowly decrease on the sensors. She listened to Danny and his engineering team argue about the best way to create an airlock seal. She watched Karen and her medical staff prepare beds and equipment for aliens they had never treated before. Finally, they arrived. The singing horizon appeared on the main view screen, and Lisa felt her heart sink. The ship looked dead. No lights except for a few dim emergency systems. No engine glow. No signs of life except for the weak distress beacon still pulsing. Life signs? Lisa asked. Jake studied his sensors carefully. I'm detecting 17 individuals. All of them are alive, but barely. Their vital signs are very weak. Danny, get out there now, Lisa commanded. We do not have time to waste. Danny and his team were already suited up and heading for the airlock. They carried welding equipment, emergency sealant, and a portable airlock collar that Danny designed during the flight here. It was completely untested, but it was their only option. Lisa watched through the external cameras as Danny and 2 other engineers floated across the gap between the ships. They moved quickly but carefully, attaching the portable collar to the hull of the alien ship near its emergency airlock. Danny welded the collar in place while the other engineers applied sealant around the edges. We are getting a good seal, Danny reported. Starting pressurization now. Lisa held her breath. If the seal failed, they would have to try something else, and they were running out of time. Seal is holding, Danny announced. We have pressure. Opening their airlock now. Karen and her medical team were already at the Morningstar's airlock, carrying oxygen tanks and emergency medical equipment. As soon as Danny gave the signal, they rushed into the alien ship. Lisa watched through the helmet cameras that each crew member wore. The inside of the singing horizon was dark and cold. Bodies floated in the zero gravity, some moving weakly and others completely still. The air looked hazy, probably from too much carbon dioxide. Karen moved quickly to the nearest alien. He was larger than a human with gray-blue skin and 4 arms. She pressed an oxygen mask over his face, and Lisa saw him gasp and shudder as clean air filled his lungs. This is the captain, Karen said, reading from a translator device. His name is Zevik. He is trying to talk. Tell him to save his strength, Lisa said. Just get them all out of there. The rescue operation moved like a well-practiced drill, even though they had never done anything like this before. Each alien was fitted with an oxygen mask, checked for injuries, and carefully moved through the makeshift airlock into the Morningstar. The medical bay filled quickly with patients, and Karen and her staff worked on all of them at once. Lisa left the bridge and went down to the medical bay. She needed to see with her own eyes that the rescue was successful. When she arrived, she found controlled chaos. Every bed was full and several aliens were on emergency stretchers on the floor. Her medical staff moved between patients, checking vital signs, administering oxygen, and providing medication. One of the aliens, the captain that Karen mentioned, was conscious and watching everything with wide eyes. Lisa approached his bed and tried to smile in a way that looked friendly. She had no idea if aliens understood human facial expressions. I am Captain Lisa Grant, she said slowly. You are safe now. You are on my ship, the Morningstar. The alien stared at her for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice rough and weak. Why did you come? Lisa was confused by the question. Because you needed help. But why? The alien insisted. What do you want from us? What is the cost? Lisa finally understood. She pulled up a chair and sat beside his bed. There is no cost. We helped you because that is what you do when someone is in trouble. You help them. The alien looked at her like she was speaking a language he did not understand. That is not how things work in space. Ships do not stop for distress calls. It cost too much. Well, we stopped, Lisa said simply. And yes, it cost us fuel and time. But 17 lives are worth more than fuel and time. The alien continued staring at her, and Lisa realized he was trying to figure out if she was lying or crazy. Maybe both. You are humans, he said finally. The new species. I have heard of you. That is us, Lisa confirmed. New and probably doing everything wrong according to how things are supposed to work out here. You saved us, the alien said quietly. My crew was ready to die. We accepted it. Then you came. Why? Lisa did not know how to explain something that seemed so obvious to her. How could she make him understand that helping others was not a choice or a calculation? It was just the right thing to do. Because leaving you to die would have been wrong, she said. I could not live with myself if I knew we could have helped but chose not to. The alien closed his eyes. You are very strange, Captain Lisa Grant. I get that a lot, Lisa replied with a smile. Part 3 Commander Zevik spent the next 2 days recovering in the medical bay of the Morning Star. His body slowly healed from the oxygen deprivation, and his mind tried to make sense of what had happened. Every few hours he watched the human medical staff as they cared for him and his crew, and every time he saw them, he became more confused. The humans treated their patients with genuine concern. Dr. Karen Foster checked on Zevik at least 6 times a day, always asking how he felt and if he needed anything. She explained everything she was doing in simple terms, making sure he understood his treatment. The other medical staff smiled at him and his crew, speaking gently and trying to make them comfortable. This was not the behavior of people expecting payment. This was not the behavior of people with a hidden agenda. These humans actually seemed to care about the well-being of complete strangers from a different species. One evening, a young human named Jake Morris came to the medical bay to check some monitors. He was a lieutenant on the ship, working with sensors and communications. While he worked, he talked to Zevik in a casual, friendly way. So, Commander, how are you feeling today? Jake asked while adjusting a display screen. Much better, Zevik replied. Your doctor is very skilled. Karen is great, Jake agreed. She takes care of everyone on the ship. One time I broke my arm during a training exercise and she was so worried you would have thought I was dying. She made me rest for 3 weeks even though I wanted to go back to work earlier. Zevik found this interesting. She cares about her patients. Of course she does, Jake said, as if it was obvious. That is what doctors do. Not all doctors, Zevik said quietly. In my experience, most medical professionals do their job efficiently, but without emotional involvement. It is considered more professional that way. Jake stopped working and looked at him. That sounds really sad. I mean, sure, doctors need to stay calm and focused, but that does not mean they should not care. Karen always says that treating someone like they matter is half the healing. Before Zevik could respond, an alarm started beeping on one of the monitors. Jake quickly checked it and then called for Karen. The doctor arrived within seconds and rushed to one of the other Talroxy crew members. The alien, a young engineer named Solix, was having trouble breathing again. Zevik watched as Karen and 2 other medical staff worked on Solix. They moved quickly but calmly, adjusting medication and oxygen levels. Karen spoke to Solix the whole time in a soothing voice, telling him he was going to be okay and to stay calm. After a few tense minutes, Solix's breathing stabilized. Karen stayed beside his bed for another 20 minutes, monitoring him closely. Even after he fell asleep, she checked on him every few minutes. Zevik could see the concern on her face. He is going to be fine, Karen told Zevik later. His lungs were damaged more than the others. He just needs more time to heal. You care about him, Zevik observed, even though you just met him 2 days ago. Karen looked confused. Of course I care about him. He is my patient. But he is not your species. He cannot pay you. His recovery does not benefit you in any way. Karen sat down in the chair beside Zevik's bed. She looked tired. Commander Zevik, can I ask you something? Why would those things matter? He is a living being who needs help. That is all I need to know to care about what happens to him. Zevik did not have a good answer for that. In his world, in the galaxy he knew, relationships were transactional. You helped people who could help you back. You invested time and resources where there was a return. Caring about strangers made no logical sense, but these humans did it anyway. Later that day, Captain Lisa Grant came to visit. She checked on all the Talroxy crew members, asking each one how they were feeling. When she reached Zevik, she sat down to talk. "We will reach Kellyan Outpost in 3 days," she said. "It is the nearest station where we can get fuel and supplies. You and your crew can arrange transport home from there." "What about payment?" Zevik asked. "For the rescue, for the medical care, for the fuel you used." Lisa shook her head. "I already told you there is no payment. We helped because you needed help." "But your crew mentioned you might not have enough fuel to reach the next station," Zevik pressed. "You put your own ship in danger to save us." "We have enough fuel to reach Kellyan," Lisa said. "We will be fine." "But what if you were not fine? What if you ran out of fuel trying to save us? Would you still think it was worth it?" Lisa thought about this for a moment. "Yes, absolutely yes. Because if we ran out of fuel, we would send out a distress call and someone would come help us." "No one came to help us," Zevik said bitterly. 3 ships passed us by. One of them was captained by someone I considered a friend." "I know," Lisa said softly, "and I am sorry that happened to you. But maybe things can be different. Maybe if more people start helping each other, the galaxy becomes a better place." "You are naive," Zevik said. It was not an insult, just an observation. "The galaxy does not work the way you think it does. Resources are limited. Time is valuable. You cannot save everyone." "Maybe not everyone," Lisa agreed. "But we can save the people we are able to save. And that matters." Zevik looked at her young face and saw genuine belief there. She truly thought she could make a difference. She thought that one ship helping one crew would somehow change the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. It was foolish. It was impossible. But part of Zevik, the part that had almost died in the cold dark of space, wanted to believe she was right. Over the next day, Zevik talked with his crew members about their experience on the human ship. Every single one of them had a story about the kindness of the humans. Tellus told him about how Jake taught her a human card game to help pass the time during recovery. Solix mentioned how Danny visited him every day to check on him and tell him jokes. Another crew member talked about how the human cook made special food that was safe for Talroxy digestion. These were small things, but they added up to something bigger. The humans were not just keeping the Talroxy crew alive. They were treating them like guests, like friends, like people who mattered. On the 3rd day, the Morning Star arrived at Kellyan Outpost. It was a large station that served as a trading hub for multiple species. Zevik and his crew were well enough to leave the medical bay, though Karen insisted they take things slowly. As they prepared to disembark, Zevik found Captain Lisa on the bridge. He wanted to say something, but he was not sure what. "How do you thank someone for giving you back your life?" "Captain Grant," he began, "I want you to know that I am going to tell everyone what you did. Every merchant captain, every trader, every person I meet, I am going to tell them about the humans who stopped to help when no one else would." Lisa smiled. "You do not have to do that." "Yes, I do," Zevik insisted. "Because you were right about something. Things can be different, but only if people know that being different is possible. You showed me and my crew that helping others does not make you weak or foolish. It makes you human," he paused. "I mean that as a compliment." "I know," Lisa said. "Thank you, Commander." Before Zevik left the Morning Star, he turned back one more time. "Captain, one more question. What would you have done if we could not be saved? If you arrived too late and found us all dead?" Lisa looked sad at the thought. "I would have mourned for you. I would have made sure your families knew you did not die alone, that someone tried to help, and then I would have kept going, kept trying to be there for the next person who needed help. Even knowing you might always be too late?" "Even then," Lisa confirmed, "because the alternative is to stop trying, and I cannot do that." Zevik nodded slowly. He understood now. The humans were not naive. They knew they could not save everyone. They knew that helping others came with costs. But they chose to help anyway, because to do otherwise would mean losing something essential about who they were. As Zevik and his crew walked off the Morning Star and into Kellyan Outpost, they carried that lesson with them, and they would make sure others learned it too. Part 4, the news spread faster than anyone expected. Within a week of the Morning Star's arrival at Kellyan Outpost, the story of the human rescue had reached a dozen star systems. Within a month, it was being discussed across the entire sector. People who had never heard of humans before were suddenly very interested in the strange new species that stopped for distress calls. Kellyan Outpost became the center of attention. Merchants, traders, government officials, and journalists from multiple species arrived to hear the story firsthand. Commander Zevik found himself telling the tale over and over again, and each time he told it, more people listened. The outpost's administration building held a large gathering 3 weeks after the rescue. Representatives from 11 different species attended, filling the meeting hall to capacity. They all wanted to understand what had happened and what it meant for the future. A Keltorian official named Horvath led the meeting. He was older, with dark green scales and eyes that looked like they had seen everything. He listened to Zevik's story with growing disbelief. "Let me make sure I understand correctly," Horvath said when Zevik finished. "This human ship, the Morningstar, spent a significant amount of fuel to reach your vessel. They risked running out of fuel themselves. They spent hours performing a rescue. They provided medical care for days. And they asked for nothing in return?" "That is correct," Zevik confirmed. "But why?" Horvath demanded. "Surely they understand basic economics. Resources are not infinite. Time has value. What was their motivation?" Captain Lisa Grant stood up. She and her crew had been invited to attend the meeting. "Our motivation was simple. Commander Zevik and his crew needed help, and we could provide it. That is all." A Vorthine merchant named Kelix laughed sharply. "Impossible. No species operates that way. You must have had some expectation of reward. Perhaps you hoped for favorable trade deals, or political influence." "We hoped they would not die," Peter Hayes said flatly. "That was our only goal." The room erupted in conversation. Different species argued in their own languages, their translators struggling to keep up. Some seemed angry, others confused, and a few looked thoughtful. "This is economically irrational," a Kel trader announced. "If every ship stopped for every distress call, trade would collapse. Routes would become unreliable. The cost would be enormous." "The cost of 17 lives?" Lisa asked quietly. The room fell silent. "What is the cost of that?" "Lives end," Kellic said coldly. "That is the nature of space travel. We accept this risk when we choose this profession. Those who survive are the ones who make smart choices about resources." "Smart choices," Lisa repeated. "Is that what you call leaving people to die?" "We call it survival," Horvath said. "Surely your species understands this concept. How did humans survive on your homeworld? By wasting resources on those who could not help themselves?" Danny Walsh stood up from where he had been sitting with the crew. "Actually, yeah. That is exactly how we survived. We took care of the sick, the injured, the young, and the old. We helped each other. That is how humans built civilizations. We did not leave people behind just because it was expensive or inconvenient." "Your world must have been very rich in resources," a Talroxy merchant suggested. "Perhaps you could afford such luxuries." Karen Foster shook her head. "Earth had limited resources. We had wars fought over food, water, and territory. But even in the worst times, most human cultures believed in helping their own people. We created hospitals, rescue services, and aid organizations, not because it was easy or profitable, but because it was right." "But these aliens are not your own people," Kelix pointed out. "They are not even your species. Why would you extend this behavior to strangers?" "Because the principle does not change," Lisa said. "If it is wrong to let humans die when you could save them, then it is also wrong to let anyone die when you could save them. Species does not matter. Life matters." Zevik stood up again. The room turned to listen to him. "I have been a merchant captain for 43 years. I have traveled routes across multiple sectors. I have made the calculations that every captain makes. When I saw a distress beacon, I would assess whether rescue was worth the cost. Twice in my career, I determined it was not worth it. I left those ships behind and continued on my route." He paused, his voice becoming rough with emotion. "When my own ship failed, 3 vessels passed me by. I did not blame them. I understood their choice because I had made the same choice myself. I was ready to die knowing that this was simply how the galaxy worked." Zevik turned to look at Lisa and her crew. Then these humans arrived. They did not calculate whether I was worth saving. They did not assess the cost-benefit ratio. They simply came because I needed help. And now I find myself wondering something I never wondered before. What if all of us have been wrong? What if the galaxy does not have to work this way? The room erupted in argument again. Some species representatives shouted that Zevik was being sentimental and foolish. Others quietly discussed the implications of what he said. A few sat in silence, thinking deeply. Horvath called for order. "This is all very emotional, but it does not change reality. The humans are a young species. They do not yet understand how difficult it is to survive in space. Once they have been out here longer, once they have faced true hardship, they will learn to be more practical. Maybe, Lisa admitted. Or maybe we will show you that there is a different way. A better way. Better for whom? Kellix demanded. Better for the people you save, certainly. But what about everyone else? What about the ships that run out of fuel because they stopped for distress calls? What about the delays in cargo delivery that hurt economies? What about the costs that get passed on to everyone? What about them? Jake asked. Are those costs really worse than letting people die? Because from where I stand, a delayed cargo shipment seems like a pretty small price to pay for saving lives. An older Voss representative spoke up for the first time. Her name was Thenix, and she had been listening quietly throughout the entire discussion. I have lived for more than 200 years. I have seen the galaxy change in many ways, but the one thing that has always remained constant is this principle. Species survive by protecting their own resources first. This is not cruelty. This is wisdom learned over billions of years of evolution. She looked directly at Lisa. You humans are proposing something radical. You are suggesting that we should reject this wisdom and embrace a philosophy that has no historical precedent in galactic civilization. Can you tell me why we should take such a risk? Lisa thought carefully before answering. Because maybe your wisdom is incomplete. Yes, protecting your own resources helps your species survive. But what if helping others helps everyone survive better? What if cooperation is actually more effective than isolation? Do you have proof of this? Thenix asked. Not yet, Lisa admitted. But I can tell you what happened after we saved Commander Zevik. Our fuel was low, as everyone knows. We were worried about reaching the next station. But when we arrived at Kellyan Outpost, do you know what happened? 3 different ships offered us fuel for free. Merchants we had never met wanted to help because they heard what we did. She gestured to the room. 12 different captains have approached my crew in the past 3 weeks. They all said the same thing. They have started watching for distress beacons. Some of them have already stopped to help disabled ships. Your galaxy is starting to change, and it happened because 17 people did not die alone in the dark. This is an anomaly, Horvath insisted. A temporary effect that will fade once the novelty wears off. Or maybe it is the beginning of something permanent, Zevik said. I have already changed how I operate my ships. From now on, if I see a distress beacon and I have the ability to help, I will help. The cost no longer matters to me. That is financial suicide, Kellix said. Your company will fail. Perhaps, Zevik agreed. But I will not fail as a person. These humans reminded me that there are things more important than profit. I forgot that somewhere along my 43 years in space. I am grateful they reminded me before I died. The meeting continued for several more hours. Arguments flew back and forth with no clear resolution. But something had shifted. People were talking about rescue operations, about helping strangers, about changing how the galaxy worked. These conversations would have been impossible before the Morning Star stopped for a distress call. As the meeting finally ended, Lisa and her crew walked back to their ship. They were tired but satisfied. They had not convinced everyone, but they had planted seeds of doubt in the old system. Do you really think things will change? Peter asked Lisa. I think we have given them a reason to question how things are, Lisa replied. What happens next is up to them. Part 5. 3 months passed since the Morning Star rescued the Singing Horizon. During that time, the galaxy experienced something unprecedented. Across multiple sectors, ship captains began responding to distress calls they would have ignored before. Some species were more willing than others, but the change was undeniable. The Galactic Trade Council finally called an emergency session to address what they were calling the human question. Captain Lisa Grant received an official summons to appear before the Council at Station Unity, the largest diplomatic facility in the sector. Station Unity was an impressive structure that floated in neutral space between major territories. The Council chamber was designed to accommodate hundreds of representatives from dozens of species. When Lisa and her senior crew arrived, they found the chamber already full of diplomats, merchants, and officials all waiting to discuss the implications of human behavior. The session was called to order by High Arbiter Thelok, a Voss who was rumored to be over 300 years old. His voice carried authority accumulated over centuries of diplomatic service. We gather to address a disruption to established galactic norms, Thelok announced. Since the human vessel Morning Star responded to a distress call 3 months ago, we have documented 43 similar incidents across the sector. Ships are stopping for rescue operations that were previously ignored. This represents a significant change to how space traffic operates. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing a star map with dozens of marked locations. Each mark represented a rescue operation. The economic impact cannot be ignored, Thelic continued. Fuel consumption is up. Transport schedules are becoming unreliable. Resources are being diverted from profitable activities to rescue operations. The Council must determine if this trend represents progress or chaos. Kellex, the Vorthene merchant who had spoken at Kellyan Outpost, stood to address the Council. This is clearly chaos. The humans have introduced an irrational behavior pattern that is spreading like a disease. Ships that should be focused on their missions are now stopping for every distress call. The costs are mounting daily. Are they, though? Lisa asked. She had not planned to speak so soon, but she could not let that statement go unchallenged. Thelic gestured for her to continue. Please explain, Captain Grant. Lisa stood and activated her own data display. We have been collecting information over the past 3 months. Yes, fuel consumption is up by approximately 3% across the sector. Yes, some schedules have been delayed. But cargo is still being delivered. Trade has not collapsed. In fact, shipping traffic is up in some regions because crews feel safer traveling routes where they know help might come if needed. She changed the display to show different data. More importantly, we have saved over 200 lives in the past 3 months. 200 people who would be dead right now if things had continued as they were. How do you measure the economic value of that? You measure it by calculating their potential future earnings, a Keltorian economist stated. And while 200 lives have some economic value, the cost of saving them exceeds that value by a significant margin. Danny Walsh stood up, his face red with anger. Did you really just reduce people's lives to future earnings? Is that how you think about living beings? That is how economics works, the economist replied coolly. Resources are limited. We must allocate them efficiently. Then your economics is broken, Danny said bluntly. Before the argument could escalate, Commander Zevik entered the chamber along with representatives from 16 other ships that had been rescued in recent months. They positioned themselves near the human delegation. High Arbiter, I request permission to speak, Zevik said. Thelic nodded. The Council recognizes Commander Zevik of Talrox. Zevik walked to the center of the chamber where everyone could see him. 3 months ago, I sat in a dead ship waiting to die. I had accepted my fate because I believed the galaxy operated on principles that made my rescue impossible. I believed that resources were too precious to waste on the dying. I believed this because everyone told me it was true. He turned slowly, making eye contact with representatives around the chamber. Then humans arrived and proved that everything I believed was a choice, not a law of nature. They showed me that the galaxy operates on cold efficiency not because it must, but because we chose to make it that way. Another captain, a Kel named Sarix, stepped forward. I was rescued by a human medical ship 5 weeks ago. Since then, I have responded to 3 distress calls myself. Each time I expected to be alone. Each time I found other ships already there or arriving shortly after. Species that never helped each other before are now working together. This is not chaos. This is evolution. It is sentiment, Kellex argued. Pure sentiment that will fade once the true costs become apparent. Captains will realize they cannot afford to keep stopping for every distress call. Can we afford not to? Asked a quiet voice. Everyone turned to see who spoke. It was a young Talroxy merchant named Vorix who had arrived with Zevik's group. My mother's ship failed 2 months ago. She sent a distress call not expecting anyone to come, but 3 ships responded. One of them was captained by a Vorthene merchant. Your species, Kellex. The captain who saved my mother said she did it because she heard about what the humans did and wanted to be part of something better. So please tell me, what is the true cost we are discussing? Because from where I stand, the cost of the old way was my mother's life. Kellex had no response to that. Karen Foster stood to speak. We have been studying the data carefully. The economic impact of rescue operations is real but manageable. Most rescues require less fuel than originally estimated because multiple ships are responding and sharing the load. Schedules are adapting. Captains are building extra time into their routes to account for potential rescue operations. The galaxy is adjusting, but why should we adjust? Horvath demanded. Why should we change a system that has worked for millennia, just because one species does things differently? Lisa looked at him directly. Because your system left people to die. Maybe it worked for those who survived, but it definitely did not work for those who did not. We are offering you a chance to be part of something better, a galaxy where help comes when you need it, where captains look out for each other, where life has value beyond economic calculations. Pretty words, Horvath said. But can you guarantee this idealism will last? Can you promise that humans will still be stopping for distress calls in a year? In 10 years? In a century? No, Lisa admitted honestly. I cannot promise what future generations of humans will do, but I can promise that we are teaching our children why it matters to help others. We are building a culture where compassion is strength, not weakness, and we hope that by showing the galaxy what is possible, other species will choose to maintain it even if we somehow forget. Peter Hayes added, We have already seen evidence that this is not just about humans anymore. 43 rescue operations in 3 months, and humans were only involved in 26 of them. Other species are choosing to help each other. That is the real story here. Not what humans did, but what everyone is starting to do. Bellick raised his hand for silence. The chamber grew quiet. This council cannot mandate compassion. We cannot order ships to respond to distress calls, nor can we forbid it. What we can do is acknowledge that a significant shift is occurring in how species interact. He looked around the chamber slowly. I have served on this council for 147 years. I have seen many proposals for change, most of which failed because they tried to fight against fundamental aspects of species behavior. But what the humans have done is different. They have not tried to change us through laws or regulations. They simply showed us a different way and let us choose. Bellick turned to Lisa. Captain Grant, your species is young. You have much to learn about galactic civilization, but you have also taught us something we had forgotten. The question is not whether your way is economically efficient. The question is whether it is right. And that is a question each species must answer for themselves. The session ended without any formal resolutions or new regulations, but as Lisa and her crew left the chamber, they noticed something interesting. Small groups of representatives from different species were talking together, discussing rescue operations, sharing ideas about how to make them more efficient. Back on the Morning Star, the crew gathered on the bridge to prepare for departure. They had accomplished what they came to do. They had shown the galaxy that change was possible. Captain, we are receiving multiple transmissions, Jake reported. Ships requesting our flight plan so they can coordinate rescue coverage in our sector. They want to make sure every route has multiple ships capable of responding to distress calls. Lisa smiled. This was better than she had hoped. Send them our route and ask for theirs. Let us start building a real network. As the Morning Star prepared to leave Station Unity, the sensors picked up a distress beacon. It was faint, coming from a ship about 8 hours away. Lisa looked at her crew and they all nodded. They knew what to do. Set course to intercept, Lisa ordered. Full speed, Peter checked the sensors. Captain, I am reading 3 other ships also adjusting course toward the beacon. Looks